Good evening. The opinions and statements voiced by our guests do not necessarily reflect the opinions of this network. Enjoy the shows.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk only on Paranormal Experience Radio. Broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army. Army officers say the missile, found sometime last week, has been inspected at Roswell, New Mexico, and sent to Wright Field, Ohio, for further inspection.
Now, historic films made in the spring of 1948 and just released show Eniwetok preparing for heavily guarded and still largely secret tests of new atomic weapons. The test's purpose is to measure atomic effects on thousands of different materials, 30,000 tons of them, not, as at Bikini, to prove military effectiveness.
San Francisco police say that 9 persons have been arrested in a narcotics raid on the headquarters of the Grateful Dead, a widely popular singing group. 2 members of the group, Rod McKernan and Robert Weir, and their business manager, Danny Rifkin, have been booked on suspicion of possessing narcotics.
3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff. 32 minutes past the hour. Liftoff on Apollo 11. Tower cleared.
Okay, we got a roll program. Neil Armstrong reporting the roll and pitch program, which puts Apollo 11 on a proper heading.
I'm going to step off the limb now. That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Well, strange lights are causing a viral buzz on YouTube. Could we have caught extraterrestrial activity on a recent newscast? Brandon Arroyo investigates.
As the newscast ended, the controversy began back on September 26th. What is that light shining in the back of the dark night sky?
With coverage reaching all the way back to 1948, for over 70 years, Fate magazine has brought you reports of the strange and unknown, all of them true. Now, Fate Magazine Radio is carrying on that tradition of setting the standard in paranormal talk radio as we report and discuss some of the most mysterious and perplexing phenomena imaginable in this strange world of ours. Now, here is your host of Fate Magazine Radio, Kat Hobson.
Good evening. Welcome to Fate Mag Radio here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. I am Kat Hobson, your host, and we are the voice of Fate Magazine. Fate Magazine has been in publication since 1948, and we are the longest continuously printed anomalous topic magazine ever. So 71 years. Yes, indeed. And you can go to fatemag.com and renew your subscription if you have let it lapse. We also have back issues and fun things too. So now that we have taken care of that, I am so excited because it's been a great day, and it's going to top off this evening by being able to introduce you. I am so excited to have Barbara Delong here with me. Barbara is a spiritual empath. She is an author. She has, with her husband, worked on a documentary with a gentleman out of South Africa. And I'm going to let her tell us about it because it's totally brilliant. She has also written, narrated, and co-produced Secrets of the Stone, which is soon to be a major full-length documentary. And I guess that would be like a feature film length, right, Barbara?
It It is sort of. It never actually made it that far because my husband had, he was not thoughtful and he died. So it's
Well,
on.
I thought that you had done that posthumously of him. I'm sorry,
No.
I misunderstood that, but
No, it was a documentary that was presented to Megalithomania in 2011, and it's up on YouTube. The full 40-minute one is up on YouTube,
yes.
but never went any further than that. But it's been viewed almost 500,000 times, so
Well,
it's
I'm
definitely
one of them.
well,
I'm probably
good.
two of them, but I apologize for that. I
That's
just
okay.
thought that was a project that you had worked on following that part of your life. And I know you never really have a following that part of your life.
Well, it's been an interesting ride, and he was alive when we did the documentary for the South African gentleman, and that was I forget, Aliens or something. It was fascinating to have a film crew come to the house and spend hours filming us, which was fascinating. I had cats who insisted on being a part of it. So if anybody ever watches that particular documentary, they'll see the rear end of a cat here and there because it was impossible to keep them off the out of the spotlight, so to speak.
Well, I understand that because one of our hosts has 5 cats, and I am often trying to keep them out of the spotlight, but they're pretty good, and nobody seems to mind a bit. I know I don't. I was just curious. First of all, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Totally. I love being able to talk about a lot of this stuff, and quite often, because I do an interview show too, I'm looking at someone else's work, so it's kind of fun to talk about the things that I've actually done. No prep at all. It's really a delightful experience.
Absolutely. I do not often get on that flip side of the mic myself, and it is a neat experience when you get to, because it's just fun.
Well, it is, and it's also enlightening because you never know just what aspects other people are going to want to know about, and very often it's not what you expect, and so you're taken in a completely different direction, which is always enjoyable.
Well, I like that too, because sometimes it's almost like we get into a mindset of, well, this is what I do. And if it's something that is from the past, a little bit farther back, it can sometimes be a surprise to yourself. When somebody says, oh, well, but what about this that you did then? And then you're taken back.
Absolutely. And, I think every time you get taken back, you discover something new about yourself. 2 years ago, my daughter-in-law gave me a Mother's Day gift, which I, alternately cursed her for and praised her for. It was a process called Storyworth. And if anybody's looking for it online, it's storyworth.com. And they send you a question every week that you answer and send back to them at the end of a year. They take all of your answers and pictures that you've put with them, and they make them into a book. And they're questions like, what was your favorite TV show as a child? Or what were your memories of your grandfather or your grandmother? Or, just mundane questions that you never think to go into. And I have to admit, in answering all the questions, I discovered stuff in my past that the memories were certainly there, but they weren't something that I had ever thought about or expressed or even gone into researching. And things like, what was my favorite toy as a child? And it turned out it was my sister, because we moved a lot. So she was the only thing that was, definitely there that I could play with constantly. And so it was an adventure for me. And at the end of a year, the book was beautiful. And I put all the family pictures in it as much as I could. And I even admitted that I would do it again if they waited a couple of years before I had to go through the process again.
Well, I think that's a beautiful gift, and I think it's beautiful that you kept it up, because so many times someone will begin that process and they kind of drop it, not for any negative reason, but just because that's a lot of work.
It actually it was, but I tell people all the time, and this is one of my cornerstone beliefs that I have held to for the last 50 years, at least, in that in order to be a creative person, you have to be created every day in one way or another. That creative process has to be something you're experiencing, whether it's journaling or writing or organizing or painting or drawing or taking engines apart or whatever. It's a form of meditation that allows you to tap into your own higher consciousness and the higher soul that's within you. So it's a way to get messages from your spirit. And so a process like this, a project like this, forces that to happen. And it was amazing because you could feel the juices start to flow, and that meant that once you had opened that portal to that part of yourself, you were able to get inspiration and insight from your spirit without your intellect being involved, which meant the messages were more spiritual, were more insightful, were more philosophical. So it was totally an enlightening experience, and it really was a joyful one after it was all done.
I like that caveat, after it was all done.
Yes.
Well, when you sat down to write Whispers of Spiritual Wisdom, that is quite something. How long had you been active as a spiritual empath, and at that time intuitively psychic? How long had you been doing that prior to starting your book?
Oh, you mean writing poetry?
Writing poetry and doing the compilation, because it's not just poetry. There are beautiful essays in there as well.
Okay. Never. Absolutely never.
Really?
Never. I've been involved in the metaphysical experience for now almost 60 years. And when all of those poems came through, I in the 80s, I started painting personal mandalas for people. And with the painting came a life reading that went along with the mandala. And the poems were poetry that came through in those readings for those people. And I just pulled all the poetry together. And the blurbs were things that I had written at other times and that were just hanging out in a folder. Patrick saw the poetry and he said, "Oh, we have to publish this." And I said, "Don't be ridiculous. It's, I don't even know if it's good." And I said, "I'm embarrassed." No. And he said,
"Oh my."
He said, no, we're going to publish it. And I said, "You can't publish just as poetry. It's disgusting. You got to put a blurb with every one of them of some sort." And so he said, "Well, give me the blurbs." And I gave him a list of blurbs to equal the number of poems that were there. He put it together and he said, "Now, what do you want to use as a cover?" And I said, "I don't care. Just, black cover, white print, whatever you want to do." And he woke me up one morning it was 6 o'clock. And he said, "Come to the bathroom window." And I went to the bathroom window and he said, "Look at the sunrise. It's amazing." And I grabbed my camera and I took a picture, and that picture became the front and back cover of Whispers of Spiritual Wisdom. So I never intended to write that book. So, but what's fascinating to me is people think that the blurb goes with the poem, and it does. Well, it wasn't intended that way, but that's the way it fell together. And so some of the poems are very, very pretty. The poem that's on the back cover, I love especially. I do love that one. But, the other ones were free verse, and they just happened. I don't write poetry.
I don't like poetry as a rule either. I have a book that was my dad's. I have two books that were my dad's. who passed a couple of years ago, and I keep them where I can read them. One is on my bedside table, the other is on my desk. And they're brilliant because they're not all poetry. One of them is art and poetry by women, very 70s and 80s kind of a thing. The other one is just basically gems of conversation or moral turpitude, depending on which person you're reading a quote from. But it covers everything from, character and morals and happiness and, the good of humans, and everybody from Homer to Plato to Samuel Clemens to people of this century, but early, because it was published early in the century. And, I just find that shows me a whole different side of my dad.
Oh, yeah, I would think so.
Which is pretty cool. And when I was reading your work, I don't know why you were hesitant, but I'm glad that Patrick didn't accept that. And I am very appreciative that you have this book out, because as I was reading through it, I posted an information on the show that this could be a textbook for life, and I think in a lot of ways it is. Do you not ever perceive it that way?
Actually, in retrospect, yes. And what was really kind of cool, when Patrick went into the hospital to pass away, he had stage 4 lung cancer. And when he went in there, I was talking to the nurses, and after he passed, I took 10 copies of it in, and I said, this might help people. And I got a note from them, and they told me that it meant so much that, people always found something they could cry over or that they could relate to, or, it touched them. So it apparently it has greater impact than I thought it did.
I think that is probably a very safe statement. Because as I'm reading through this, I'm just like, I can't even finish. I've gone back and highlighted and gone back and reread, because there's one in particular chapter that I'm trying, I don't know if it's a chapter, but well, I guess I could just go here. Reborn. And the first line is, out of time are you called by a memory rich? And many times you mention chimes through here.
Yes.
And that is just such an important thing to me. I am the woman of wind chimes. So, I always have them on the front and the back of my house, much to my husband's chagrin at times, and the dogs too. But, it's so healing. And
absolutely.
I don't own a sound bowl, but I think if I did, I'd never get anything done.
Well, if you were going to read one, though, it would be the one on the back cover.
Yes.
That's the one I love.
Yes. And before we go, I'm going to get you to share that.
Oh, I don't have it in front of me.
Oh, well, I do.
Oh, okay.
Then I guess that before we go,
you can read it.
But do you know what? I have the afterthought.
Okay.
I don't have the actual cover.
Oh.
Why do I not have the actual cover? But we'll figure that out. I will make it so. But I just think that there's nothing that I have found in this book that didn't speak to me personally.
Well, that's cool.
I think so too. It's very rare. I read a lot of authors, in what I do. You do too.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
yes.
I try not to have anyone on unless I'm familiar with their work. And I just think that's courtesy, but I learn a lot too. So it's a good thing. And if you had to go into the center of the book, what would be the one that shocked you the most that people respond to? The strongest response, I guess.
There's so many of them. Gosh, and I haven't really looked through them that I haven't looked through them lately at all, to be honest with you. I think the whisper one, that is, there's a whisper that drifts upon the wind. It reaches you and touches your soul. A seed, a spark unite, and abundance is yours because a whisper answered a whisper. I think, they're all of them pretty.
They all are. I just think that's stunning. So
well, I think what always has impressed me is that I didn't realize I had written a poem until I read through what I had written about somebody, and and there it was,
Well, yeah.
But this is, let's see.
What about something that I liked is you called A Voice Never Used. And I just thought that there's so many of us that we ignore that about us. We just kind of go along, and then all of a sudden we have a way to be able to reach out, to bring this out. And again, you utilize chime. From a voice never used, yet clear as a chime from a well deep within, summoned from beyond time. And I think that's a great line. I've got highlights all through this thing.
Okay, I've got the one on the back. Do I have time to read it?
Please, yes.
Okay. Through canyons of crystal flow rivers of dreams, on currents of time to dimensions unseen. Unfold your wings of wishes, let the winds of destiny guide you. Open your heart and welcome the visions carried within. For magic there awaits you, harvested through time. 'Tis yours alone to awaken, you need only conjure the rhyme.
That's perfect.
That's my favorite.
I can see it. I can feel it. And we're going to break.
Okie doke.
We will be right back. Y'all come back with us and we will be pondering on that.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk only on Paranormal Experience Radio. Broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
Oh, come on. I'm Southern, but... Nope. That'll do. Hello. I am Kat Hobson, host of Paranormal Experience here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. I enjoy having guests from all areas of the paranormal, from ghosts to ufology to cryptids and beyond. You'll find some of the best researchers in their fields bringing you some great information. Join me on Wednesday nights from 8 to 10 p. Eastern here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
To the believer, the evidence is overwhelming. To the skeptic, there will never be enough. Hello, everyone. Join Kevin and Jennifer Malik, the host of Paraversal Universe, every Friday here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting. Also heard on WCET-FM and The Rift. Log on or tune in as they check out the mysteries found within the 8 categories of the unknown and unexplained, including ghosts, and haunted places, aliens and UFOs, theology and mythology, cryptids and monsters, urban legends and folklore, conspiracies, metaphysics, and forbidden archaeology. Listen as Kevin and Jennifer interview the top minds in their respective fields as they share theories and information regarding these unsolved mysteries. For future show and archive information, one can find Paraversal Universe on Facebook, Twitter, and MeWe under various Paraversal Universe headings. So, for excellent talk radio about the unknown and unexplained, check out Paraversal Universe, where all paranormal perspectives apply. Brought to you by the Northern Wisconsin Paranormal Society, LTD, and produced by WBHM-DB.com.
Thank you for listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. The time is 23 minutes after the hour. We are back. Thank you so much for your patience with us as we go through these advertisements, and I hope that everyone got to enjoy Barbara as she read that. And Carolyn in chat said, "Well, Barb, nice." I agree. And, you know, we were talking during the break about how beautiful your website is. And by the way, that is barbaradelong.com. So I am just thrilled to be able to share that with you, because when I saw it, the first thing I said was, "Oh, this is beautiful." And when we were talking during the break, Barbara, you said, well, I told them I wanted everything on the index page, on the front page. So what would be a normal drop-down menu is your page.
Oh, yeah.
And it's brilliant.
When you it's funny. My webmaster said it's not done, and I said it hasn't been done. That means it doesn't mean it can't be done. And I have found that when you hit a web page, you look at the front of it and then you move on. And this way you hit the front of my web page and everything is right there. Now, as you go into the different buttons, there are certainly side panels where you can go on forever. But
Yes.
But it's just the mentality of people who do the going through websites that you have to catch their attention immediately, or you lose them because they just go on to the next one and the next one and the next one.
And we were talking about how I'm notorious for that, because I go down rabbit holes, and about my bookmark list that is so long that, because I have so many intentions of coming back to a site, and yet I go further down the rabbit holes. And you were of the opinion that that's not a bad thing.
No, that means you're following your intuition, which is it's more appropriate. If your ego is set on researching one very small area, lots of people will just do that. But with your manner of exploring and investigating, you get caught by a flow of creative energy and you follow it. And it's where you're supposed to go, instead of saying, no, damn it, I wasn't going that direction. I want to just look up this stuff. And sooner or later, you go to where you're supposed to be. May not be where you wanted to go, but you're going to where you're supposed to be. And that's what's supposed to be inspiring to you. And lots of times I will run across something that, dang, I didn't know that particular topic was out there. And I have found over and over again that the longer I've been in this field, the more I know, the more I know I don't know, because you get to a point where you're saturated and you think, well, okay, I now know it all. And suddenly you discover not only do you not know it all, but everything you know is now old-fashioned and has been updated. So it's a constant matter of researching and letting go of what has now become, not truth, and reaching for those elements of thought that will become the truth in the future. It's exciting as all get out.
Well, it's funny that you put it that way because I am always amazed by what I didn't know I didn't know.
Yeah.
I mean, it is legion. There's so much there's so much to learn.
Well, yeah, and I think when you do shows like you do and like I do, where you're you're talking to authors and out of respect to them and their work and all of the work that they put into the book, you read the book, you suddenly find that you are stretched beyond your imagination. I'm going to be interviewing Dr. Greg Little tomorrow night on his book, The Denisovans. And first of all, I never heard of them. And second of all, it answers a lot of questions for me. And third of all, I'm suddenly learning about nuclear DNA and mitochondrial DNA, which frankly I never would have voluntarily learned, but because it was in the book, I read it. Now I understand a little bit about it. But it's a way of educating yourself, keeping your mind open and stretching. And sometimes, we get to a certain point in life and it's like, I'm done with education. I've learned all I need to know. Now I'm just going to relax and enjoy life and work and stuff like that. But if your mind isn't constantly challenged, that old adage of use it or lose it is very, very true.
Absolutely, it's true. I have found myself falling into that trap. And I have to be very careful because Parkinsonian dementia is on one side of my family and Alzheimer's is on the other side of my family. So I have to work very hard at making sure that that part of me stays agile while I'm trying to keep the rest agile too. And it's overwhelming sometimes.
But it's so exciting. I mean,
it is always exciting.
And you go from I think there's in a couple places in the website. I mean, I really should go back and reread everything because my philosophy has changed dramatically since it was created. But I keep telling people, I can tell you what I believe today, but check with me tomorrow. It may be a completely different direction. I mean, I have from time to time talked about angels and spirit guides and stuff like that. I no longer believe in them. I believe we are. No, I don't. I mean, I believe in God. I believe in a creator, absolutely. But I believe our spirits, the spirits that we carry within us, are totally evolved spirits that are having a human experience, and they're all knowing, and they're connected to cosmic consciousness. And that's where our information comes from. That's where our guardian angels are. That's where insights that help us to avoid total disaster. That's where that information comes from. And of course, past life experience as well comes through that aspect of us. I mean, our consciousness only has this particular lifetime as a frame of reference. Our spirit has all of eternity as a frame of reference. And if we can find the portal to get from consciousness to higher consciousness or the spirit, we have it all. And those people, now this is my opinion only. First of all, everybody has a right to their own philosophy and opinion. And this is just mine. I totally believe that those people who say they channel, for want of a better archangel, Archangel Michael, that their spirit, their higher consciousness realizes that they can't accept the fact that it comes from within them. So they basically hologram themselves to have an archangel or a guardian angel appear to them in a vision, in their head, wherever, and give them the information they need. They're very comfortable to take that information from another source as opposed to trusting what comes from within.
I would agree with that, and I'll tell you why. When I first started actively seeking, I bought books on connecting with your spirit guides. I talked to people who I considered much more knowledgeable on the topic than myself. I was told, well, as you're falling asleep, ask them to tell you their name and, as you're awakening so that you'll retain it.
Mm-hmm.
And I only ever got one name, and it was a very strange name, and it was Malgonquin.
Oh, cool.
And when I tried to Google that name to find out what history might be related to it, the only thing I ever got was the Algonquin Indian tribe. Nothing was relevant to this name. And I thought, well, this has happened 3 different times. This has to be relevant, right? So I just thought, well, you know, I get so much deja vu. I make life decisions based on it, and I've got all this other stuff going on. Maybe this is who does that. Maybe this is me, you know.
Yeah.
Because I can't find any other point at all. No other point of reference. So when I stopped being so rigid in my thinking, then things just started flowing much better.
Well, you know,
it's an odd thing.
We've been taught that, you know, we have to look to higher authority, and in many cases we've been programmed that we don't know it all, so we have to find somebody who knows it better than us. And in my opinion, you know, and you know, I have done psychic readings. You've done them from time to time too, and I don't believe that people should go to psychics. They should go to themselves, because a psychic they can read your energy. Yes, they can, you know, tap into you and tell you what your inclination is at that moment in time. Yes, they can actually do that. But the reality is, until you trust yourself to make those choices, you won't make them.
True.
Because you're looking for someone else to tell you what to do. This is your life. This is your experience. You make the choices. You live with your choices and you know, the results thereof. That's the purpose of the lifetime, not to seek out. And it's the same thing with people who are doing spiritual journeys and things like that. I did a spiritual circle online at one point, and we had 70 or 80 people that signed up all around the world. And I thought it would be a great thing to have people, you know, tuning in at the same time so that we could talk about different topics that were spiritually charged. And I found, much to my horror, that and half the people that signed up were practitioners, I might add, that when I started to talk about what spirituality was, nobody knew. And so what ended up is I did lectures. And I sent everyone my lecture notes that I had gathered, and sometimes it was like 100 pages. And all that material, by the way, is on the website as well. Yes. And so it's a matter of becoming your own medium, becoming your own psychic, becoming your own guide. That's what we're here for. We're here. I think a lot of people I have spoken to say, well, I'm here to heal people, and I'm here to do this, and I'm here to guide. That's, in my opinion, bullcrap. You're here to develop your spirit, to gather what your spirit needs. And if in so doing, others learn from you, that's wonderful. But that's not your purpose. Your purpose is to work on the spirit you're carrying within, the one that's riding in this physical body that we've got. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say that at that point, if you're taking that ownership of the experience, then you're able to draw on your past incarnations.
Absolutely.
As it were. And carnations, not the flower, incarnations.
Incarnations, yeah.
Duh. That, you know, but you're also following that thought process out. You're going to be bringing what you're learning now forward with you.
Yes.
And do you feel that this would be in part almost like a legacy type of thing? Do you feel that it's like a soul you hear people talk about soul contracts. Is it a soul contract, or is it just coming back, just period, because that's what we do?
My philosophy, again, for today, actually it has been for the last couple years, that there is a source of creation. And that source of creation at some point in time sent out seeds. And those seeds were spirits. And those spirits floated for a time within the cosmos, and found that while they had super intelligence, there was no way to expand unless they took on a physical form. So they began to manifest within physical form on planets like Earth, and live the lifetimes and gather information, and so their journey is going from lifetime to lifetime to lifetime, gathering information, wisdom, and here's where I diverge from just about everybody else. And everybody says you're gathering to return to the source. I don't believe that. I believe we are gathering information to the point that at some point in time, we ourselves become a source and send out seeds ourselves.
Well, don't you think that that's kind of what we're supposed to be doing anyway? I mean, there is a creator.
Yes.
But even if you go to the basic tenets of any religion, really, you would be finding that, you proselytize, you go out and you bring people into the fold, as it were. But instead of doing that, this would be more of just feeding them.
Well, yes and no, because you're not giving testimony. You are a living example of what the journey becomes. So it's not words, it's action.
Yes. Well, anything that somebody's going to take from you and be serious about is going to be your actions, how you live, how you behave.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a matter of not needing to say something. It's how you live your life. And so in that way, yes, you're teaching by example. And so it's when somebody says, I'm here to be a teacher, and then you look at how they're living their life, and it's sort of like, well, what do you mean you're here as a teacher? Well, I give classes. So you're not teaching. You're stuck in a place. But if your teaching is a part of how you live, if you truly are, I wrote someplace that you can either be a parrot or a prophet.
Yes, you did.
And it is, you can quote chapter and verse till you're blue in the face, but nobody's going to pay attention to you. But if you take the chapter and verse and you bring it into yourself and you make it your own, and then you live that philosophy, then you do indeed become the prophet.
Yes, you do. But we have to take our break.
Okie doke.
And I have thoughts on that too, because I love that segment. So we will be right back. Y'all come back too. This is fascinating stuff, and I know y'all are loving it.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk, only on Paranormal Experience Radio, broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama. Since 1948, Fate magazine has brought you reports of the strange and unknown, all of them true. Fate Radio is carrying on that tradition, bringing you the unusual, macabre, strange, and bizarre. Join host Kat Hobson Sunday nights from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
Abnormal Alabama presents Crypticon October 25th and 26th at the Port in the Wharf, Orange Beach. Bigfoot, the paranormal, authors and speakers, vendors, and your chance to experience the Psychomantium. There'll be a costume contest and much, much more. October 25th and 26th at the Port in the Wharf, Orange Beach. Get more info, directions, and tickets available now at abnormalalabama.com. That's abnormalalabama.com.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, Birmingham, Alabama.
Thank you for listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. The time is 45 minutes after the hour. Welcome back to Fate Mag Radio. I am so glad you are here, and I am having a brilliant conversation with my guest, Barbara Delong. I am just having a great time, but we have a question for you in our chat room. But before we go, I wanted to say something on this topic that we were discussing relevant to parrot versus prophet. And we had been talking during the break, and one of these days somebody is going to start recording breaks, but it's not going to be me. But they would make great books. But seriously, I think that it's so important what you said about the person that just goes and memorizes everything, and that's what they're tossing out in their conversation and their lectures and their teachings. And when they rewrite, it would be plagiarism, except that they're using their own verbiage to put out the same idea. And when somebody internalizes it and it's something that they know to be truth that is altered, it actually does alter you, then I think that's when you become a living lesson.
Yeah, it's sort of like don't speak it, live it.
Totally. And that's in every walk of life. That's in everything that humans do.
Oh, absolutely.
And I just find that fascinating. So we have a question here from Carolyn who says, what's your thoughts on numerology?
It's a tool like everything else. It is not carved in stone. If I were to recommend a perfect person to go to or a book to read, it would be Forever Numerology is the website. Lynn Buss is probably the best numerologist I've ever met. He's phenomenal, but it's a tool. And so often it's fun to play with, but it's not life. It's a tool. And so often people let tools become crutches. And if it's a crutch, it'll break and let you down. So you have to, use it for insight, use it for understanding, use it to deepen your understanding into things. It's like every aspect of life. There are tools out there. There are cards. There are astrologists. There are lots and lots of tools out there. And I think it's great to experience them, to learn a little bit about them. It's always good to know a little bit about everything. But if you begin to rely upon it, then it becomes a crutch. And then you're not taking information from your own spirit. You're looking to a book. And when people write books, whatever they have written, even if it's the Bible, what has been written was totally 100% accurate for the person who wrote it. But that doesn't mean it's appropriate for you.
Agreed.
Take the Bible out, because the Bible is a whole nother discussion and show probably. But
it is a whole nother show.
but when you're looking at astrology, there are go-to books. When you're looking at dream interpretation, there are go-to books. Well, the reality is you have all the answers inside. You don't need, and if you're looking to put meaning to numbers, write the numbers out and put your own meanings to them. Therefore, when you see those symbols or those signs, whatever you have written about it is applicable to you alone.
Personally.
Don't go by what someone else has said, because, it's sort of like I could tell you exactly how I got to this point in time, step by step by step. And if you replicated it, you would not be in the same place I am. Because it doesn't serve you. You want to create. If you want to create a tool, create your own tool that's appropriate for you. Don't. But Lynn Buss's numerology it's great. He's got great stuff. He has a computer right on his website. All the explanations are right there. You don't have to pay him to do something for you. It's done for you.
Wow.
Cool site.
And that was Forever Numerology.
Yes, .com.
.com. Well, terrific. We have a multiple choice question.
Okay.
Actually, Sherry would like to know your thoughts on ghosts, aliens, or Bigfoot. Have you ever had experiences with anything like that?
Yes. Ghosts, aliens, or Bigfoot. 3 different topics.
And you've got 10 minutes until we go to our next break. And
okay.
If it takes longer than that, we'll pick it back up. And if you don't want to answer that, you don't have to.
Oh, no, sure. I'm open to anything here. I don't believe in ghosts. I do believe that when a spirit leaves the body, that there is a shadow. And it's not a part of the soul. It's an imprint upon reality. So it's not a part of you, but there is sometimes a filament that will last. If someone has died a traumatic death, there is an imprint in time, but it's not a part of the spirit of the people that have gone before. It's that energy that is imprinted in time. And often, if you're sensitive, you can feel those imprints. Sometimes you'll feel a cold place in a home or whatever where a traumatic death has happened. So I don't believe in spirits coming back and rattling chains. As a matter of fact, in my experience, when a spirit moves on, there is a period of time where they want to come back and scare the daylights out of somebody, but they don't do it because there's so much exciting stuff in going back into the ether and becoming a pure thought form and looking at where you need to go next. Aliens, I'm not so sure about, to be honest with you. In my experience, I have found that when people don't understand something, they blame it on the aliens. Not so sure they actually exist, or if they do, that they are as prevalent as people say they are. I believe that a lot of the ships that we see, zapping around are either ours or somebody else's. I won't deny that there probably have been ships that have crashed on the planet, but I do believe most of the stuff we see in the air is reverse engineered, and that they are our own, that they have nothing to do with other planets coming and interfering with our evolution. I did see a ship did land on my campus when I was in college. I saw it when it took off. It zoomed over my dorm and it blacked out the sky. So I know the ships are out there, but they're unidentified flying objects. That means they're unidentified. It doesn't mean they came from another universe. I do believe that we are visited from time to time, and when we are, it's interdimensional. It has nothing to do with spaceships coming from other galaxies. I think that's science fiction. And we as humans, when we don't understand something, we create something that we're comfortable with, that we can live with, that explains it. We've done it since fire. And we continue to do it with greater technology now. So I think that we are a species that is evolving on this planet. There have been at least 5 major total destruction episodes where we have gone back to square one and started out again. And lots of times some of the things that we're finding on the planet came from a prior time that was a human species artifact that another culture made, and then there was mass destruction and we had to start from scratch, and we came across some of these objects. I don't believe that we have been colonized. I believe that we have grown and evolved and will continue to do so. And I do believe that out there in the universe there are other species that are evolving as we are. But I think that we are too primitive a race to be among them.
I would agree with. I mean, that's my opinion. Also, is that we keep destroying ourselves.
Well,
It is repetitious because they keep finding archaeological digs that are, 20 to 100,000 years older than they thought anything would be.
Oh, hundreds of thousands of years.
And it's constant. They're constantly being discovered.
And
older and older.
Oh, absolutely. So that genetically, we did come from single cells, and we may be going back to them, and there may be another mass destruction. I mean, the last big one was a meteor hitting the planet and having there was an ice age that was imposed because of the meteor, and that was, I forget how many thousands of years, 20, 30,000 years ago, whatever it was, but we've evolved back to this point in time, and I don't think the Earth cares. We're like parasites on this planet. The planet is a living organism as well, and probably we're not even noticed. But as far as Bigfoot goes, I think Bigfoot is interdimensional. I think it's something that goes through portals and pops in and pops out. I don't believe Bigfoot really exists, full time here on this planet.
I think I would probably agree with that also. I have a lot of friends, as I'm sure you run across people all the time too, who are avid investigators into all things anomalous, and I generally tend to not try to find something that could kill me.
Well, and the thing, Well, and the thing is, you see on television, they're out to kill it. They're out to capture it. For heaven's sakes, it's living in peace and has for centuries, hundreds, thousands of years. And as far as back to spirits and ghosts and things like that, everything is energy. And if you leave an energetic blueprint someplace, people will pick it up. People will feel it. People will feel the consciousness, depending on how sensitive you are. So, and in my opinion, about 80% of the hauntings or paranormal experiences that are happening are because of an emotional disturbance in the people who are living in that particular place. And their energy causes things to happen.
I would agree. We have a lot of the same thought processes. It's kind of interesting.
It appears so.
Well, because, I have always believed that, I'm fairly certain, even though it's not really science, it's, theory and trial and error, but I totally believe that poltergeistic activity comes from humans.
Mm-hmm.
I've been in an environment where I was the impetus because of stress and strain and angst and adolescence and everything else. I have investigated homes where, in particular one, the child was self-mutilating as well as destroying the house here and there.
Mm-hmm.
So it was interesting because I knew that she was cutting. And she was shocked that I knew that she was cutting. And I'm like, well, I've never done that, but I've been this upset.
Oh, yeah.
So, it's just the way that rolls sometimes. And let me give you the name of this organization that offers counseling, and they usually work with collegiate people. And I'm going to say right now, the organization is to write love on her arms in case anybody needs that kind of help who is listening. TWOLHA, TWALA. Is their acronym, and you can find them online. But you always have to take into account something like that when you're having activity. And we've got 2 other questions, but I'm going to hold on to those until after our break.
Okay.
Because we're coming up on our 5-minute news break. And, geez, I hope we find some good news, don't y'all? It's ever hopeful. So we'll see what rolls with that. And come back. We are having a fantastic discussion. This is Barbara Delong here on Fate Mag Radio, and I am Kat Hobson, her host. So thank you so much for being here, and we will catch you on the flip side.
Support for this NPR podcast and the following message come from the UPS Store, offering shredding, printing, mailboxing, and more. And this Columbus Day, the UPS Store is doing another ing altogether. Opening the UPS Store. Every ing for a small business. And, of course, shipping. Individual store hours may vary.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Barbara Klein. Former Vice President Joe Biden's son, Hunter, is for the first time addressing President Trump's accusation that he was involved in corrupt business dealings in Ukraine and China. Through an attorney, Biden says he was a paid board member of Ukraine's largest natural gas company, but he says no domestic or foreign investigation has alleged any wrongdoing during his tenure. And NPR's Tamara Keith reports Hunter Biden plans to step down from the board of a Chinese company for which he is not paid.
In a statement, attorney George Maceras says Hunter Biden intends to resign at the end of the month from the board of BHR, a Chinese equity investment fund management company. Trump has publicly asked for China to investigate the Bidens and Hunter's work for that company. The statement from Maceras goes on to say that should former Vice President Joe Biden be elected president in 2020, Hunter Biden will agree not to serve on boards of or work on behalf of foreign-owned companies. And Hunter Biden will continue his practice of keeping his father out of his business affairs. Tamara Keith, NPR News.
In Japan, at least 30 people are dead following a powerful typhoon that slammed the country this weekend. Abigail Leonard reports from Tokyo.
Rescue efforts are underway to help people who were in the typhoon's destructive path. It made landfall south of Tokyo and then moved north. The Japanese government said 27,000 military troops and other rescue crews had been deployed. Among the reported deaths were people whose homes were buried in landslides and others who were swept away by flooded rivers. Rescue crews were trying to dig survivors out of buildings that had been covered by the landslides. The government says close to 400,000 homes remain without power, and about 14,000 have no running water. Still, authorities say safety infrastructure had saved lives. The last typhoon this size to hit Tokyo was 6 decades ago, and it killed more than 1,200 people. For NPR News, I'm Abigail Leonard in Tokyo.
Ecuador's capital, Quito, is under a 24-hour curfew after 10 days of mass protests. Demonstrators have attacked government buildings and media offices, angry over the government's decision to end fuel subsidies. NPR's Philip Reeves reports.
President Lenin Moreno has moved his administration to another city and imposed a state of emergency. The oil industry suspended some operations, transportation's in chaos, and half a dozen people have been killed. Moreno's now hoping to bring calm with a curfew and also talks with an indigenous organization that's a key player in the crisis.
NPR's Philip Reeves. Mexican security forces have turned back an estimated 2,000 migrants bound for the U.S. Many had been in the area for months, waiting to get transit or residency papers. This is NPR. Pope Francis today declared 5 new saints. John Henry Newman, one of the most influential Christians of modern times, 3 nuns, and a laywoman. NPR's Sylvia Poggioli reports Britain's Prince Charles was among those gathered for the ceremony in St. Peter's Square.
In an ode to Newman published in the Vatican daily L'Osservatore Romano, Prince Charles said his canonization is a cause for celebration for all Britons. Newman converted to Catholicism in 1845 and is admired by both Catholics and Anglicans for following his conscience at great personal cost. He was a poet and theologian whose books and hymns greatly influenced modern Christian spirituality. He helped found the Oxford movement aimed at returning the Church of England, which had split from Rome 3 centuries earlier, to the teachings and rituals of early Christianity. Both liberals and conservatives claim him as their own, the former for his emphasis on conscience and the latter for his submission to authority. Sylvia Poggioli, NPR News, Rome.
The wife of a U.S. diplomat who left the U.K. after being involved in a deadly crash says through her lawyers she's devastated. They also say Anne Sekulis wants to meet with the parents of Harry Dunn, the 19-year-old British man who was killed in August. Sekulis left Britain under diplomatic immunity. The Dunns are heading to the U.S. today, hoping to get that immunity waived. I'm Barbara Klein, NPR News in Washington.
Welcome back to WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. The time is 5 minutes after the hour. Welcome back to Fate Mag Radio. Thank you so much for joining us here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting. I'm Kat Hobson. I'm your host, and I am joined tonight by Barbara Delong, who is just putting up with all the questions and answering everything, and I have had the best time getting to know her work. So I hope that y'all are enjoying this at least as much as I am. She's amazing. So I told you, Barbara, that we had a couple of more questions for you.
Mm-hmm.
And they're interesting. This is a great audience. But the first one is, what's your views on climate change?
Well, the first of all, the climate is changing, but it's a cycle that has been going on for billions of years. It's just that we haven't seen this part of the cycle. It's kind of like Halley's Comet. It only comes a certain number of years, and depending on when you're born, you may see it once or not at all. And I think we're going through a natural progression of the seasons. I think it is changing. There is no doubt about it. But I don't think that you can blame it on cow flatulence or any of the other many things that it's been blamed on. It's a part of life. It's a progression. And we have to live with it, because no matter what we do, the earth is going to continue to wobble, and it's going to continue to go through its cycles. And we have to learn to live with it as opposed to try to change it, because if you try to change it, you could literally probably, if you got really extreme, throw the earth out of orbit, which would not be a good thing.
I think that would be a strong negative.
Yeah.
Honestly. And I found it so weird, too, that 3 months ago, we're hearing about cow flatulence and how we're going to have to, eradicate cows from the planet. And all of a sudden, Burger King has a meatless Whopper out 3 months later, right? So tell me this hasn't been in process for quite some time, and this just seemed like a handy thing to toss out there to get people to go vegan. I'm not giving up meat. I'm just, I'm not a big meat eater, but every so often I would like to know what's there.
Well, there are certain blood types that have to have the meat. So, even if you stop eating meat, the cows aren't going to stop having gas.
Well, true. And, I don't like pleather.
No.
I just, pleather shoes are just not my idea of a good thing. Although I did buy some jeans that were made from recycled bottles the other day, and they are surprisingly comfy.
Well, if you go back in time, this planet was covered with, look at bison. All of the bison that were all over the place. You can't tell me they didn't have gas.
Well, I think the dinosaurs probably did too.
Yeah. Well, the atmosphere was different then. When the dinosaurs were here, there was, I believe, a double atmosphere then. But things change, and we have to evolve with them, not try to change them and hold them in place. You can't hold back time. It doesn't work.
Well, you can't, and you cannot control really very much of anything.
Well, the farmers here in Connecticut are not able to plant their fields in the same time frame that they used to, because the weather has changed. Mm-hmm. And those people who are pig-headed and are going to plant them when they usually planted them are going to find that their crops fail. But those that pay attention to how the seasons are changing and shifting will be able to adjust their planting and harvesting to go along with it. The weather is changing. There's no doubt about it. And so, crops that once grew in one place no longer grow there. Come on. The axis has shifted at one point in time. So And then the plates floated in other directions, so that we are constantly changing. You have to look at it, chart it, and adapt to it.
Were you in school in the 70s and 80s?
And the 60s.
Okay. I graduated from high school in 1980. And we were all going to die because of an ice age.
Yeah.
And, and it was the same alarmism, the same, Annie, get your gun kind of mentality.
Mm-hmm.
And so now we have climate change because global warming sounded ridiculous to us that had gone through the ice age. So they just changed it to climate change so that it was adaptable for any purpose.
Well, and the reality is it's going to change no matter what we do. So,
yes.
Adapt. I mean, I graduated from high school in 62. Okay. So, we were taking shelter under our desks in case of an atom bomb explosion. So,
which was not an unlikely possibility at that time.
No,
I was duck and cover too. And
but you look at there's always somebody out there saying, the end, that man who has been walking up and down Broadway for at least the last 100 years saying the end is near. Holy mackerel, it is near. It's just a relative term, though. It's.
I wonder how many miles he's walked with his sign, with his placard.
I'm sure he's worn out a couple of them by now.
I would think. But the other question that we had for you, and there's a couple of more. How do you feel about demonic spirits? Do you feel that they may exist, or is this more of people who that's what they are?
I believe I believe that there are people who are very, very disturbed. I personally do not believe in demons. I don't believe that there are entities out there that are trying to buy your soul or drive you crazy. I think there are people who are chemically imbalanced, and this is what they feel, this is what they believe, and sometimes you can believe so much in something that you create it within your reality. Not the fact that a demon exists, but that you are responding to what you think is out there as opposed to what is out there. I don't believe there are demons. I believe that we're souls we're spirits on a human, on a human journey. And this is just something else that, to be perfectly honest with you, I believe that demons were created by the church in order to frighten people. And they've done a good job.
Well, certainly. Because people, anytime anyone has any type of mental illness, there's, in certain cultures, demons as the cause. Because it couldn't really just be mental illness because, look at what's happening. Well,
yeah,
people can generate that.
With chemical imbalances, people can be very, very violent. And, depending on what parts of their brain are affected, they can either be very unresponsive or they can be brilliant. So that these things, they're out there, they are human conditions. And as a spirit living in a human body, you have to cope with that. You have to work through personality, and you have to be able to manifest within the reality what you need to evolve and develop and grow.
There you go.
It's that easy.
It is that easy. And so we already touched on this, but she says, so do you believe in angels?
No.
And you've already answered that, I believe.
Some people need to believe in them, and so I have no problem with them believing in them. I just don't happen to. I truly believe that my spirit has the ability to tap into cosmic consciousness, which has the answers to everything, and that sometimes we're at a place in evolution where we have not been able to grasp the fact that we have control of things, that we are in charge, so that we like to think that there's someone we can reach to that is going to intervene for us. But that's not the case, because if somebody intervenes, that means that the lesson that was set up for us by us at one point in time, that you haven't solved the problem and dealt with it. So the lesson will come back in another way. It's sort of like if you stop someone from spraining their ankle, you almost make sure that lesson will come back harder, and they may have to break their leg in order to learn the lesson. So, and certainly if somebody is standing in the way of a car, you push them out of the way. I mean, it's not, you don't stand back and let everybody, kill themselves, but
right.
But I have friends every now and then that do and say things repeatedly, and I wish I could say I don't try to intervene and stop them, because that I do, but it's hopeless and it's ridiculous, because they are going to continue doing what they are doing in order to learn what they need to learn, so that they can overcome that and get onto a healthier flow. It's just frustrating to see a good friend repeat something over and over again.
Yes, it is. And I was, in my adolescence, that friend, because I was a slow learner and adamant that things were going to be the way that I projected them to be. And that was tough. So eventually I learned. Something that I found interesting was both with demons and then with angels. They're both controlling. They're both tools, if you look at it that way. I know that I have been, because I'm a paranormal investigator as well, I've been in environments where there were very angry human spirits. Mm-hmm. And I finally developed the attitude that if you're a schmuck in life, you're a schmuck in death. And, right? Well, I mean, it's true. And I think that's, I think if you're wonderful in life, you're wonderful in death as well. But it is reassuring to think that some of the idiocy that I've accomplished in my life will be going forward with me, so that maybe I won't have to relearn that, which leads us to our next question, which is, what are your views on karma? We've got about 2.5 minutes before our break, but we're probably going to have to pick that one back up too.
Well, karma is energy.
Yes.
And karma isn't bad or good. It's energy. And it does surround you, and it does gather around you. And often you can take it lifetime to lifetime. But if you're constantly, making foolish choices and things like that, then it does go with you. It is an energy that is attached to your spirit that you do glide forward with. So it's a teaching tool. And there are some. I have a son who I every now and then would try to caution him in some directions, and you have to understand that things don't always work out the way you want it. And then I realized that this kid came in with so much good karma that he could fall in a pile of crap and just come out smelling like a rose. And I've never seen anything like it. And I finally just quit. And I did say to him once, you better hold on to some of that so you can take it forward with you. And he just laughed. Some people bring that kind of, their lessons. It isn't meant to be good or bad. It's these are lessons that have not been learned, and therefore they're there for you to learn. And the quicker you learn and accept and embrace and move on, the more you start to balance out the karma, the energy that surrounds you.
Well, I tell you what, I am not somebody who dwells on that much, because I think that you have to have lessons. Mm-hmm. You don't not discipline a child when you see them getting in harm's way.
Oh, absolutely.
It is teaching. And so we are going to have to leave for this next break. This time is really getting away. So, I think it's because we're covering so much and I'm enjoying you so much. But we will be right back. Thank y'all for being here, and we will catch you when we get back.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk, only on Paranormal Experience Radio, broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
Several U.S. presidents are on record talking about the UFO mystery.
Yeah, Presidents Jimmy Carter, Ronald Reagan both had UFO sightings of their own, but the current presidential campaign might be the first in which UFO disclosure has been championed by a major party candidate.
DIA, CIA, it moves around, is operating a program to train psychic spies to spy and use their powers against Russia. John Ronson writes about this in The Men Who Stare at Goats.
The first known sighting of a ghost took place right after Abraham Lincoln was assassinated in the late 1860s during the administration of Ulysses Grant.
Project Paperclip, Clinton releases it all in 1998.
Possibly the unequal cooling of its surface.
I say, do you still think it's a meteor, Professor?
I don't know what to think. The metal casing is definitely extraterrestrial.
It's a place where UFO hunters and scientists gather to examine paranormal activity in the region.
Some of the documents, this is bringing Nazi scientists into the United States to work here. So we fought against the Nazis, and it's not, this again is not a revelation. As early as 1947, 1946, we knew some of this, right?
On the paranormal, will we see U.S. President Barack Obama's foreign policy go intergalactic in a quest for gold stolen by aliens? We'll tell you at least how the White House responded to claims the chief executive has been teleporting to Mars. So let's get to today's Capitol account.
UFOs, hauntings, psychic abilities, conspiracy, ESP, cryptozoology. There are many things that remain unexplained in the inexplicable world around us, and we're talking about them here, looking for answers on WBHM Digital Broadcasting, Birmingham, Alabama. The truth is out there.
Welcome back to Fate Mag Radio. I'm so glad you're here. And once again, we are the voice of Fate Magazine in publication since 1948. 71 years of the strange but true. So thank y'all for your support. I'm so glad you're here. And I know that y'all are enjoying this conversation because Barbara Delong is awesome. We have been covering all the things. We have been covering karma. We have been covering spirits. We have been covering demons and angels and spirit guides. Probably not. It's you. So, I really love this refreshing mindset, Barbara. I'm having so much fun.
Well, it's funny when I first got onto the field, a long time ago, I kind of took on everybody else's opinion, and the more I read, and I've been a voracious reader my entire life, and so I started to actually form my own opinions, which is what everybody should do, and the more I read, the more I thought, well, I don't really believe quite that way, and then you get comfortable with it, And, you've heard me say this is my opinion and my opinion only, and it doesn't have to be anybody else's. This is where I'm working. And I think everybody should be that. And that's, in my way of thought, that's when I did the spiritual development circle. I thought everybody could share their opinions and we could, all eat off of one another's energy. It didn't work out that way, but it was a way of everybody learning and researching and then wanting to share the information. And unfortunately, like I said before, half of the people that signed up for that circle were practitioners, and it appalled me to think that they didn't know what the law of one was. They didn't know what karma and dharma were. They didn't understand creation and spirituality and, all of these things that are the foundation to what we are and who we are. So many people will say, well, I'm a light worker. Well, what does that mean? I mean, today, to me, it means nothing. When you say you're a light worker, what does that mean? You only work in the light? You have to have the lights on when you work?
That's totally it. Totally it.
And it's sort of like,
I've always perceived that as being someone who is able to utilize energy for positive change. But I think everyone can do that if they just try.
Yeah, I at this point, I used to say I was looking for seekers, or I was a light worker, and then it got to be such a hackneyed expression that it lost its meaning. So I'm, I guess, an eternal student. And, like I said before, the more I learn, the more I realize I don't know anything. Exactly. And it's, let me go back and if anybody, by the way, is looking for a great site on spiritual writing, the, what's it called now?
BarbaraDelong.com.
Oh, no, that's my site.
I know, right?
Sacred Sites, Sacred Texts, I think is the name of the website. And it's one of the best reference places ever for spiritual stuff. I think it's sacred.
I think it is.
Yeah. Have you used that site? I'm pretty sure that's what it is.
I have. And I will pull it up to make sure that that's the same one. But, well, I won't know if that's the same one that you were thinking of. But,
it's sacredtext.com, and you can read almost any spiritual text here, and you can research anything of a spiritual nature here. And I think the important thing about all of this stuff is you take what works for you and you incorporate it into who you are. And if it doesn't sound right to you, then ignore it
and move on to the next.
Yeah. Yeah, everybody's different. Everybody's working on different stuff. Everybody's in a different area of evolution and development. And so, what really resonates to you is what you glom onto and you incorporate into yourself, and then you move on.
It actually has a dash. It is sacred-texts.com.
Yeah. It's a great source of material and all sorts of wonderful stuff.
Well, it really is. And this was the site that I had in mind, but it includes everything. You've got world religions, traditions, mysteries, abuse, age of reason, ancient Near East, astrology. Everything is here.
Yeah.
So it is.
And instead of looking for a teacher, become your teacher. Become Absolutely. The teacher. And it's funny. I hated school. I absolutely hated it growing up, and so obviously I became a teacher, and which I found hysterical, and then I have 2 master's degrees in teaching, and it wasn't until I stopped teaching that I really started to teach on a spiritual level. So it was an amazing journey, but it took me a very long time to get to the end. And I only teach because I talk a lot, and hopefully people hopefully people will say that's bullcrap or let me look into it. And if I can make people think enough to challenge me or to look into something that I've said or written, then my job here is done.
Well, I am just so impressed because Sherry in chat says, yes, definitely a believer of creating your own positivity. And if you have that, you pass it on to others.
Mm-hmm.
And that particular individual I know personally, and she is a fantastic example of that. So I see why she believes that way.
I think another catchphrase, and I don't know where it came from. I'd like to take credit for it, but the last time I thought I had created a saying, I found out, and that was when in doubt, don't. And I took credit for it for the longest time, and I finally found out that I did not originate that one, that Benjamin Franklin did. So now I'm saying I must have been a reincarnation of part of Benjamin Franklin, but
well, at least you were in good company with the mindset.
Yeah. But and another quote that I have that I'm pretty sure I didn't create, but I love is you create your reality by your perception of it.
Ooh, that's good too, and that's very true.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. And it's sort of like if everything looks, if everything appears to be not going right, then you have to sit back first and laugh at it and then figure out, okay, so what the hell is the lesson I'm supposed to learn from this so I can actually move on?
And let's get this lesson now.
Yeah.
Yes, I know. I've been there.
It's kind of like, but you don't let it get you down. You just sit there and say, okay, there's a lesson here. Now, what the devil is it? And if you're working on trying to figure out what the lesson is, then it does present itself so that things, or like my house has been for sale for 190 days and only 3 people have looked at it. And it's kind of like, well, maybe I wasn't meant to move until later on, or maybe the person that's supposed to buy it hasn't gotten their act together yet, or, and so I'm marking time, and in marking time, I have to continue to be creative or everything stops.
Yes.
So
that's actually a great outlook, because after my father passed, my stepmother was going to move. But she wasn't going to move for a year because that's what everybody said. You don't do this and that and whatever.
Yeah.
And so in the course of this time, she's decided that she likes her house. That's why they bought it.
Mm-hmm.
And she's not in a mad dash to make any changes. But in the interim, she's been fixing this and piddling with that and having this done. And so now she's living in the perfect house. So
there you go.
And where's the rush in getting out of here, right? She's got a fantastic walkable neighborhood, and she's just, all the reasons that she loved the house in the first place are still there, except that she misses my dad, and he lived there too.
Yeah.
So, and I'm sure that is most people in that situation's take on that.
Oh, absolutely.
If you give yourself time. So.
Yeah, and so many people try to rush and make changes, way ahead of time, and usually they are thwarted and get angry, and the reality here is, when the time is right, the time is right, and if it isn't, then sit back and read another book and do another interview.
Right. Or in my case, I'm trying to finish writing a book, and it's just like, really? I did not think this was going to be hard. What was I thinking? So, it's funny. It's funny. I thought it would be a gravy train because I write well.
Mm-hmm.
And consolidating thoughts is not what one would think. It's a lot more difficult than I actually just finally broke down and bought a book on the subject. And thought, well, I'll listen to somebody else for a while. I'm not doing it.
Well, I found, when I was going to do the website, I had a friend who it was a startup business. And I said, well, you don't have a lot of customers, so can you do a website for me? And she said, sure. And a year later, I asked her, well, where's the website? And she said, well, you have to write it. And that was a shock to me.
Yes.
And she said, let's start with a bio. Do you have one? And I said, I can't write a bio on myself. That's just, and I gave her 3 or 4 whose forms I had stolen from other people that I thought were good forms. And I said, here's what I've been working with. You do it because I trust you. You're a really good writer and you know what would be appropriate. And she came back about a week later and she gave me, she said, what do you think of this? And I looked at it and I said, it is technically beautifully done. I wouldn't buy a used car for me for anything in the world. And so then I realized that I had a unique voice. Now, that doesn't mean unique great. It just means unique different. And that if I used my voice, my thoughts, my ideas would be in my voice and people would recognize it and they would pay attention to it to a certain degree if they were reading it. And so it taught me an amazing lesson. And, everything on my website just about is channeled. In other words, comes from spirit but it's my spirit and it's my voice. And because it comes through me, it's my vocabulary and my voice. And in some cases it's magical. And in other cases, it isn't as magical, but the thoughts are there. And so, finding your own voice and saying, and really kind of thumbing your nose with whatever other people say is appropriate or the way to do it, for me is a better way to go because this is my voice. This is what I have to say and this is how I'm saying it. And I can stretch it or shrink it, whatever you want me to do, but it's my voice. And it's worked for me so far.
It has very well. I love your site because it is your voice. And it just dawned on me when you were saying that it's the same person who wrote the poems, who had these wonderful thoughts and insights and put them together like this, even though you kind of had to be drug kicking and screaming to that.
Yes.
The guy was smart and the guy knew you. That had to be a wonderful relationship. And I think that's beautiful. That it is the same you all the way through.
Oh, yeah. And the only place it isn't is when I put the material together for the spiritual development circle. Mm-hmm. I pulled together notes from all over, and I'm pretty sure I've written in a couple of places. I did not write this. These are my notes that I spoke from, and the actual lectures are there, so you can listen to the lecture, and they're totally channeled, but the notes are not. They're just things that I had, that I gathered, that I worked from it when I was talking about those particular topics.
Well, we've got about that's not true. We have about 4 minutes until we go to break. And I was curious because you have a section here, which is part of your Spiritually Speaking blog. Ugh, easy for me to say. On remote viewing.
Oh, yeah.
And I have the toughest time with that.
With remote viewing?
With remote viewing. And it's supposed to be trainable, is it not?
Well, the spiritually speaking part of it was one part. That wasn't the remote viewing. There was a remote viewing part, which was really... It was inspired by Bill Brown. He was on my show and I was interviewing him on his pyramid stuff. Right. And he was talking about he had sites in Egypt, and if anybody wanted the map, if they were going to Egypt, they could stop by and visit the sites. And I said, well, not many of us are going to be going to Egypt. Why don't you go there? Why don't you do remote viewing there? And he said, well, can you do that? And I said, of course you can. And so we put together another group online, and I took them into a meditation, and then I took them out of body and into these sites. And it was fascinating. I think there are about 12 in all, or no, I don't know, there were at least 12 or 13. And what I did was I gave them the information on the site we were going to. I took them I took them out of body into the meditation to that site. So we did remote viewing on the moon and in Antarctica and in China and in Monk's Mound and all over the place. And what I found was when I first started, the first two are not as good as others, because normally when I do led meditations, I give people an opportunity to drift on their own. And everybody said when I stopped talking, they stopped seeing anything. So after the second one, I continued to talk all the way through it. And then there were places on the site where they could leave their comments as to what they saw and what they felt. And for the most part, it was all interdimensional, or we traveled back in time, or it was a fascinating experience, and I'm going to continue it. I want to go into places like Derinkuyu in Turkey and into those caves that are 13 stories down that will hold 20,000 people. Oh, yeah. I want to take people to those kind of sites and allow them to get the feeling of the antiquity of the sites and see what they feel. But remote viewing is amazing, and if you do it, if it's a led meditation and whoever is leading it knows what they're doing.
Okay.
And what's cool is all of the meditations are there. You can listen to the meditation and do the meditation, and it takes you out of body and to that site, and you follow along and then leave your comments.
Well, I see the meditations there. So that is terrific. And again, in case you didn't hear me before when I mentioned this, the website is www.barbaradelong.com. And this is where I went down to her remote viewings and spiritually speaking blog.
Mm-hmm.
You'll see all of this on the front page.
Yes.
Which is brilliant. So, and when we come back, before we get too long, I want to give you a chance to talk about your cosmic deck of initiation.
Oh,
because I think that's neat, and I loved how you explained that to me. So, and Sherry, I will tell you really quick. Well, we've got about 20 seconds, so we're going to have to do it when we come back. Sherry wants to know specifically what remote viewing is.
Oh, sure.
Can we do that in 30 seconds?
Remote viewing is when you go into a meditation and go out of body and send your spirit to another location and then bring information back.
Perfect. Okay. And with that, we are going to be going for our final break. I can't believe this time has gone by so swiftly. And if you have questions, go ahead and put them in chat. You can do that at Spreaker.com or your Spreaker app if you're mobile. Or you can go to our website, WBHM-DB.com, and you can click the little chat button. It looks like a little word bubble. So we will be right back. Thank you so much for being here, and we'll see you on the other side.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting. The best in paranormal talk radio.
Abnormal Alabama presents Crypticon October 25th and 26th at the Port in the Wharf, Orange Beach. Bigfoot, the paranormal, authors and speakers, vendors, and your chance to experience the Psychomantheum. There'll be a costume contest and much, much more. October 25th and 26th at the Port of the Wharf, Orange Beach. Get more info, directions, and tickets available now at abnormalalabama.com. That's abnormalalabama.com.
Since 1948, Fate magazine has brought you reports of the strange and unknown, all of them true. Fate Radio is carrying on that tradition, bringing you the unusual, macabre, strange, and bizarre. Join host Kat Hobson Sunday nights from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern on WBHM Digital Broadcasting. You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk only on Paranormal Experience Radio. Broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
Thank you for listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. The time is 45 minutes after the hour. Welcome back to our final segment here on Fate Mag Radio. I am so excited to have hosted Barbara Delong. We have had some fantastic information shared. And if you were late to the game, that's all right. We will have our archives up on iHeart, iTunes, Google Play, Apple Podcasts, Cast FM, Spotify, Spreaker, obviously, and all kinds of places all over the net. Kind of like Visa, we're everywhere you want to be. So, Barbara, thank you so much, because I've learned so much, and I know that the people in our chat room have as well, both of them. So, I know that I had said that I wanted to go back to the cards, the Cosmic Deck of Initiation, but was there something that you wanted to cover before we did that?
I think just one short statement. Somebody had mentioned about remote viewing. The one thing that I have found that is a constant, no matter who I talk to, who I interview, who I am close to as far as on their spiritual journeys, the one thing that is a constant is that everyone says you have to meditate. And I interviewed somebody not long ago who spoke of, if you're just starting meditation, to do empty mind meditation, where you meditate on nothing. In other words, you close your eyes, you get to a place that's quiet with no interruptions, if that's possible. And as thoughts come into your brain, you just say thank you and you let go of them. And you get to the point where you can concentrate on nothing for 10 minutes or 20 minutes, whatever it is. Start with 10, but then stretch it when you can. And what that does is it opens the portal to your higher consciousness, so that you're able to receive messages from your higher consciousness. You're able to get inspiration from the spirit that you carry within you. But meditation, you can't get there without some form of meditation. Just doesn't happen. So,
all right.
But as far as the Cosmic Deck goes, it's a deck of cards that I created that are hand-painted mandalas. And I was challenged to create them because I trashed people's tarot decks at psychic fairs. And when I worked psychic fairs a long time ago, and I just found tarot decks for me were negative. And I said, there should be a spiritual deck of cards out there. And at that time, there was the Rider-Waite and there was the Aquarian deck. And those were really the only two decks out there. And so my friends got together and said, you either create the deck or shut up. And basically. And so 9 months later, I had a deck of 52 cards that I had created a mock deck for, and I put it on the table after a fair. I said, there you go. Make it say something negative. I dare you. And after about 20 minutes, they gave me the bottle of wine and said, keep drinking. So, and it was interesting because I didn't read Standard Tarot, and frankly, I didn't like it. And so I thought, well, all right, I'm just going to create my own deck. And so the first 11 cards represented the chakras, the physical reality. And then the next 11 cards were cosmic laws. And so that's, you have body, and then you have mind, and then you have spiritual laws, which is spirit. There were 11 of those, and then I threw in the astrological. I wanted those to be 11 too, and but the astrologers I knew said it was not, bad taste to try to get rid of one of the astrology signs. So I had to put 12 in, and then I threw some wild cards in as well. And the deck of cards represents your journey through time. It starts with the physical and it goes to the spiritual. It's really a map. And what it does is it gives you information on where you are spiritually. The layout is it's an astrological layout, so it gives you 12 months of the year, and it gives you the 12 houses of the astrological chart, so that you get more deep spiritual information for yourself, so that you give yourself tools to work on yourself. And it gives you the same stuff that a regular tarot deck would give, but it gives it to you in a manner and shape and form so that you are able to act on the changes that are coming and understand what's coming and deal with it better. So it's a different, people have called it an oracle deck or a light energy deck, or, it's just my deck. But it works well for me.
Well, it must work well for other people too, because you sell a good many of them and you've got great reviews on them.
I do. And, it's interesting. It's no longer published, so that if you want a deck, you have to search for it. And the publisher did say that he would reprint the deck for me, but I had to buy 3,000 decks at $6 a piece, and I wasn't about to do that. So I said, you know what? I think, and frankly, the patterns are out there on the internet. You can make your own deck if you want to by just downloading the pictures and making your own deck. There have been times when you could get a deck for $6, and then there are times when the prices are way up there. But I think it's important that if people really want this deck, that they have to search for it, because then it means something to them. And there's a little poem in there that says that the deck will work for you as much as you work with it. So it's a cool deck.
Absolutely. Yeah, I like it too, because, to cross the threshold and challenge the mind, use it with love, it will serve you in kind.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. So I think this is pretty awesome, because I think that tarot is kind of negative also.
If you stop and think about it, the tarot deck was originally a card game that the gypsies got a hold of. And since that time, I mean, over the decades, now there are other circular decks out there. There are some beautiful decks out there, but they hold to the standard, the four suits and the major and the minor arcana, and I don't have any of that. So, it's very different. Now, there's a plethora of choices out there. And, I would highly recommend everybody create their own deck, because that will speak to them and their spirit better than someone else's deck might.
Well, I know that the energy off of these mandalas is pretty strong, even just looking at them.
It is
and
cool.
They're just absolutely breathtaking. They're beautiful. And I like that. I like pretty and beautiful and, what you get.
Well, I mean, they were done in watercolor. And as I told you before, I have no art training, so I'm not an artist. And I didn't know watercolor wasn't supposed to look like this. So there you are.
Really? It's not supposed to look like this?
No, actually, if you blow them up, really, really far, you can actually see the brush strokes. Somebody asked me if I had used a spirograph to do them.
Really?
I was very flattered.
I would say, because
I was very flattered.
Yeah, my particular favorite is, I don't know how to tell you which one it is, but they just, I'll have to share it with you later.
Okay.
So I don't see any way to be able to come out and say, this is the one. But, I have enjoyed every one of them. I have enjoyed learning from you. I know that you've been well complimented throughout this. We've had both chat rooms, and you've been called fascinating and interesting and amazing, and it wasn't just me saying so.
You're very, very kind. Thank you.
But it's Sherry says, yep, not a fan of tarot cards, never did it, never will, don't want to know. So I was just like, I had a reading done in Jackson Square, New Orleans, that I had actually forgotten about by a young woman, and I told her how much money I had to spend, and she chose to go beyond what would cost that much, and I said, I really only have this much to spend. That's all I have with me. And she got angry at me.
Oh, wow.
And I just looked at her. I said, I told you when I first talked to you that this was it. And she didn't know my name. We didn't talk about names or hey, I'm or whatever. And I got halfway across Jackson Square, and I heard someone say my name.
Mm-hmm.
And I turned back around, and I went straight to her. And I said, what did you need? And she said, well, I don't know who you are. I said, well, apparently that doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Because you called me. And she was just like, okay, we're done.
Yeah.
But, it was hilarious. And
well,
then
it's funny because when I do readings, I, tell people what an hour is. And then when we start reading, I say, now look, I don't set a time clock. If this goes 3 hours, it's still the one price.
Right.
So don't panic here. And,
well, she was out to make a buck.
Yeah.
And that's New Orleans. That's how that rolls sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
But Harry said, one last question, please, if you have time. We've got 2.5 minutes.
Okay.
Do you think of pets? What do you think of pets and soulmates, or as soulmates?
Pets as soulmates and familiars? Absolutely. I believe that they do connect to us. I think that not always, but I think that there are times when there is such a synchronicity and such a connection that dogs and cats, and my only experience is with dogs and cats, but I do believe that they are connected to us in a very deep spiritual place, and that I'm a cat person, but I've had dogs too, and I believe that they are an important part of a sharing of soul energy, that they give unconditionally. And if you have pets that are giving unconditionally to you, it makes you a better person. And if you live in a place where you can't have pets, that's not judgmental against you. I mean, you can still love pets and be connected to them. But I think when people choose not to have pets and the reason is just because they don't like them, that there's something missing in the person.
I would agree.
I mean, I've had a Russian blue cat that I swear came back a second time as a Russian blue, and it was the same characteristics, the same behavior patterns. It was as though he knew me, and I fully expect to find another incarnation of that cat before I pass over.
Do you know, I have to tell you that I lost a dog a few months ago, and it was devastating because it was a horrific, unexpected moment.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been a bit. It's been since the beginning of summer, maybe late spring. Anyway, while I was out of town, my husband called and said, in the course of the conversation, he said, a little dog broke into our yard. And I said, what? He must have been running from a coyote or maybe some of those feral cats, right?
Mm-hmm.
And because we do have two that they can't catch here. And but we do have coyotes up on the hill and stuff like that. And David was like, well, I think that someone threw him over the fence. And I said, well, why would they do that? It would have broken his back. We have a high fence. So at any rate, the dog had obviously been loose for some time. Mm-hmm. And he's very respectful of birds overhead, so he knows hawks and owls. So he was out on his own for a while. When I took him to get cleaned up and groomed, he looks like a very small version of the dog who crossed. And he has the same facial features.
Mm-hmm.
He is really astounding. And he now has the same bark. Except that he can't quite roll the R's yet, but he's working on that. He's like, ruff, ruff, you know. So I'm just kind of like going, well, I was planning on just fostering him. And so now he's got a collar with my phone number on it and stuff. So he's not going anywhere.
I believe pets adopt us, that we don't adopt them.
I agree. I totally agree. And this little guy was escaping something to come here. So he's not going anywhere.
Oh, that's cool. That's very cool.
So. Well, tell people, Barbara, how they can find you, how they can listen to you. And I've had so much fun, but it is time. I hate that. We'll have to do this some other time.
I would love that.
Me too.
The website is barbaradelong.com, and on that, there's a place where you can connect to me. There's also a button that takes you to my YouTube channel, and we have lots and lots of fascinating shows that are on the YouTube channel. And the name of my podcast is Nightlight Radio, and that's on Blog Talk Radio. And the shows, always go back up onto the YouTube channel after we do them. So we have, similar different places that carry our webcasts as well. So it's been a joy. I've had a lovely time. Thank you so much for having me on. It's been a pleasure to talk about myself.
It's nice sometimes, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
It is, because you do good work. People need to hear that sometimes. So,
absolutely.
Well, thank you again. And to all of our listeners, thank you so very much. I'm so glad you were here and that you got to enjoy Barbara right along with me. We will be back. I am looking forward to this week of shows. We have Paranormal Pride Monday. With Denise Pridemore, we have Paranormal Experience Radio with myself, and I am hosting Krista Sageray. We have Friday, Paraversal Universe, as well as Ghost Talk Radio. Both of those will be rebroadcast, but they will be brilliant. They both have things going on. They're presenting and hosting. So that'll be terrific. And then I'll see you next week, same cat time, same cat channel, for another episode of Fate Mag Radio. Thank you so much for joining us. I appreciate you, and we'll talk to you soon.